Today I'm gonna list out for you 6 times where you should avoid sparring. You go into the gym, you're like, oh, I'm gonna get some rounds today, and if these things come up, you should absolutely not get in the ring and do rounds. Now first, I want to clarify what I mean when I say sparring, because I'm going to list out 6 things and then you're going to go, well, I can spar through those. That's not a big deal, but I'm not talking about Thai sparring. I'm not talking about play fighting where we're just kind of, we're doing that. You can pretty much do that any day of the week, no matter what the situation. You're going to come out safe, you're going to come out having fun, and it is always okay. When I say sparring, I'm more referring to picking it up somewhere between like 50 to 70%. It's a little bit dangerous and you have to be on point and safe for these rounds. So let's get into point number 1, when you should avoid sparring. When you forget your mouth guard, or the person you're sparring has forgotten their mouth guard. I went to Vancouver one time, big trip to get over to Vancouver for me. We're talking about an hour drive, approximately, plus an hour and a half ferry ride. You get there, you realize, oh my gosh, I didn't bring my mouth guard. I took some paper towel, I wrapped it up really tight, and I bit down on it to make sure my teeth wouldn't clack together. But if you don't have your mouth guard, you are risking serious damage to your teeth or just your head in general. So if somebody does not have that mouthpiece, I would say take a rain check and postpone until the next time you guys are properly protected. And I guess the same could go for a groin protector, but I feel that one's a little bit less dangerous not having that. The mouth guard is an absolute must. Number 2 time you should avoid sparring is when you have a specific injury to a joint or a point on your body where you go, you know what? It's just gonna get aggravated, it's gonna get re-injured, and the recovery process is gonna slow down so much more if I spar and my opponent or my sparring partner makes a mistake. Let's say you've been low kicked multiple times and you're kind of hobbling and you're like, oh, I want to get back in and spar, and then somebody kicks you, and again, you would have recovered in 3 or 4 days, but now you're hobbling for another week. There are times to look at your injuries and recognize it needs more recovery time, and I should take a break on rounds today. Point number 3 is actually fairly similar. It's an injury, but to the brain. We're talking about if you have been concussed, and you will not believe how many people have taken big shots and then got back in the gym the next day. And it's just one of those things that people don't recognize because the science is not always out there saying how bad impact to the head can actually be, and there's no real gauge for it at this point, how severely you've been injured. So you have to be very careful. If for any reason you have any of the following symptoms, you had speckled vision, like your vision was not on point, you had little lights, if the lights above you are bothering you, if you have headaches, anything like that, which is concussion symptoms, yes, you should sit out and spar, even if it's light. In that point, I wouldn't even advise light sparring because even a little tap might set you back. I would say just sit on the sidelines until you are feeling healthy and you know you are recovered. Point number 4 is probably going to be a little bit up for debate. And I'm going to kind of argue myself here to a certain extent. We're talking about sparring when you're kind of spaced out. When you know you're going on a really bad day and you just can't focus and you know you're going to get a hit a whole heck of a lot. Now, there's an argument for sparring on these days because you might have a fight on one of those days. And it's not good to always feel 100% when you spar. But at the same time, sparring on those days when you're just completely out of it and you know you're not going to gain anything, in my opinion, is usually not very productive. The other day, we were at the gym doing some boxing rounds and one of the guys was getting really frustrated with himself and he ended up slamming down, like taking his gloves off, throwing them on the ground and walking out of the gym. He came back and then continued, good on him. But you have those days where they're just really frustrating, and if you're sparring with people who are actually trying to light you up and not be nice, it's probably a good idea to just avoid sparring in general. Point number 5, and this is something that I am very particular about now, I do not spar if I don't get a proper warm-up. It's a great day to avoid sparring. If somebody comes in, they're like, oh, I'm leaving in 10 minutes, but you want to do some rounds? And you're like, I just got here, oh sure, and you jump in. If you have not warmed up, there's much more chance of getting hit, damage to the head or hurting your body in some stupid way because you haven't limbered up properly. So don't rush sparring. Take the proper warm-up time. Very important to your health and your safety. And make sure that you're always warming up and then getting in after you're actually ready to go. My suggested time period before sparring would be 20 to 30 minutes. And the final time where I would avoid sparring when you go into the gym is you see somebody more advanced than you, or even potentially around the same level, and they're just being a jerk. You see them with other people, you're like, what the heck? What are they up to? Maybe they're having a bad day. Maybe they just don't know what the correct level is. If you see somebody and you know they're gonna light you up, you know you're gonna go in and take some punishment, it's not a bad day to just be like, yeah, I'm avoiding sparring today. I'm just not feeling it. Thanks, I'm good. So those are the times that I suggest you avoid sparring. It's fun to do. Most people love sparring. Most people say, oh, it's one of my favorite things. For me now, I've been doing it for so long, training for so long, that sparring is actually one of my least favorite days to go into the gym. I would rather clench, I'd rather do pads. Pads are actually my favorite. I'd rather go for runs. It's basically everything else I'd rather do before sparring. So if any of those things that I just mentioned today come up on the list, I'm like, yeah, it's not a good day for me to do rounds. And I don't really get upset with myself because it's my least favorite thing to do, just because the rounds, they're not easy. They're not pitter-patter little light rounds. And if we're just having fun, just playing around, then sure, I'll go in and do them. When it's more intense, I take it more seriously and I recognize there are dangers. So if you guys enjoyed this episode, which should hopefully help you be safer on those sparring days, please give the video a like, join the channel, get subscribed. Train hard, guys. I'll see you back here soon for another episode.